All right, on the road again and reading Joseph Campbell's book on primitive mythology, still in chapter 6 on shamanism, on the shamanistic vision, section 3, starting that today. So, the inward experiences through which the power of the shaman is attained and from which motifs of his shamanistic rites derive may be surmised from a survey of autobiographies gathered in recent years from the Buryat, Yakut, Ostyak, Vogel, and Tungus shamans of the vast quadrangle of Siberia. Bounded on the west by the Yenisei River, east by the Lena River, south by Lake Baikal, and north by the Taimyr Peninsula, which has been from Paleolithic times a classical academy of shamanism and is today its strongest surviving center. A person cannot become a shaman if there have been no shamans in his Sib, the Tungus shaman Semyon declared when questioned at his home on the lower Tunguska River in the spring of 1925 by the Russian folklorist G.V. Xenofontov, who was himself a full-blooded Yakut. Only those who have shaman ancestors in their past receive the shamanistic gift, said the shaman. Whence the gift descends from generation to generation. My oldest brother, Ilya Semyonov, was a shaman. He died 3 years ago. My grandfather on my mother's side was a shaman too. My grandmother on the mother's side was a Yakut from Chirindi of the Yesei Yakut Sib, Jak Dakar. It is to be understood, Xenofontov comments, that these shamans, in their turn, received their shamanistic gift from further representatives of the family line, whose names they knew, so that an unbroken chain of shamanistic tradition has come down from the depth of the centuries. The Yesai Yakut, he adds, are most probably Yakutized Tungus. When I shamanize, the shaman continued, the spirit of my deceased brother Ilya comes and speaks through my mouth. My shaman forefathers, too, have forced me to walk the path of shamanism. Before I commenced to shamanize, I lay sick for a whole year. I became a shaman at the age of 15. The sickness that forced me to this path showed itself in a swelling of my body and frequent spells of fainting. When I began to sing, however, the sickness usually disappeared. After that, my ancestors began to shamanize with me. They stood up like a block of wood and shot at me with their bows until I lost consciousness. They cut up my flesh, separated my bones, counted them, and ate my flesh raw. When they counted the bones, they found one too many. Had there been too few, I could not have become a shaman. And while they were performing this rite, I ate and drank nothing for the whole summer. But at the end, the shaman spirits drank the blood of a reindeer and gave me some to drink too. After these events, the shaman has less blood and looks pale. The same thing happens to every Tungus shaman. Only after his shaman ancestors have cut up his body in this way and separated his bones can he begin to practice. As Professor Mircea Eliade has shown in his cross-cultural study of shamanism, the overpowering mental crisis here described is a generally recognized feature of the vocational summons. Its counterparts have been registered wherever shamans have appeared and practiced, which is to say, in every primitive society of the world. And though the temporary unbalance precipitated by such a crisis may resemble a nervous breakdown, it cannot be dismissed as such, for it is a phenomenon sui generis, not a pathological but a normal event for the gifted mind in these societies. When struck by and absorbing the force of what, for lack of a better term, we may call a hierophantic realization. The realization of something far more deeply interfused, inhabiting both the round earth and one's own interior, which gives to the world a sacred character, an intuition of depth absolutely inaccessible to the tough-minded honest hunters, whether it be dollars, guanaco pelts, or working hypotheses they are after, but which may present itself spontaneously to such as William James has termed the tender-minded of our species, and who, as Paul Radin shows in his work on primitive man as philosopher, exist no less in primitive than in higher societies. The force of such a hierophantic realization is the more compelling for the mind dwelling in a primitive society, inasmuch as the whole social structure, as well as the rationalization of its relationship to the surrounding world of nature, is there mythologically based. The crisis, consequently, cannot be analyzed as a rupture within society and the world. It is, on the contrary, an overpowering realization of their depth, and the rupture is rather with the comparatively trivial attitude toward both the human spirit and the world that appears to satisfy the great majority. It has been remarked by sensitive observers that, in contrast to the life-maiming psychology of a neurosis, which is recognized in primitive societies as well as in our own, but not confused there with shamanism, the shamanistic crisis, when properly fostered, yields an adult not only of superior intelligence and refinement, but also of greater physical stamina and vitality of spirit than is normal to the members of his group. The crisis, consequently, has the value of a superior threshold initiation. Superior in the first place because spontaneous, not tribally enforced, and in the second place because the shift of reference of the psychologically potent symbols has been not from the family to the tribe, but from the family to the universe. The energies of the psyche summoned into play by such an immediately recognized magnification of the field of life are of greater force than those released and directed by the group-oriented, group-contrived, visionary masquerades of the puberty rites and men's dancing ground. They give a steadier base and larger format to the character of the individual concerned, and have tended also to endow the phenomenology of shamanism itself with a quality of general human validity, which the local rites of whatever community simply do not share. And finally, since the group rites of the hunting societies are fond precipitations into the public field of images first experienced in shamanistic vision, rendering myths best known to shamans and best interpreted by shamans, the painful crisis of the deeply forced vocational call carries the young adept to the root not only of his cultural structure, but also of the psychological structures of every member of his tribe. In a profound sense, then, the shaman stands against the group, and necessarily so, since the whole realm of interests and anxieties of the group is for him secondary. And yet, because he has gone through in some way, in some sense, to the heart of the world of which the group and its ranges of concern are but manifestations, he can help and harm his fellows in ways that amaze them. But how, then, does he come to such power? We'll stop there and take up that question in the next reading. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed it.